Welcome. Today we are going to chip a small Xbox One. For the method I'm going to use, you're going to need a good pair of cutters, a heat gun, a good soldering iron. This is a Weller I'm using here. Instructions, I've got both sets because I don't know what board's in this yet. Some very thin cable, a bit of heat shrink sleeving, the chip, a bit more heat shrink, and not forgetting glasses. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some cable on the IC. So I'm going to flatten the pins out, just using a pair of long nose cutters, and you can see now that they're nice and flat. We're going to use 6 of the pins, and the reason I've got heat shrink is just purely for aesthetic tidiness for me. I don't like leaving the chip loose inside the PlayStation. Is I'm going to cut off 6 pieces the same length. Okay, now I've got 6 pieces of cable. This stuff is actually quite delicate to work with. It is incredibly thin and in itself quite difficult to pick up. I'm just going to strip the ends like so. 1, 2, 3. You can use a stripping tool should you want. Depending on your skill set. So there we go, I've got 6. And just straighten them back out again. They're all different lengths on the end. I'm not concerned about that at this stage. What I'm going to do now is get my iron and realise I've sat down without any solder. Okay, I now have some solder. I'm just going to put a bit of solder on each of these. The kit did come with some solder, but for the feel of it, it feels like it's lead free. And to be quite honest, I'm not a fan of lead free solder, especially when you're working with old stuff. Trim these off all nice and neat. Right, so I'm now going to take my IC. I'm going to observe where the dot and the notch is in it in retrospect to my little diagram here. And I'm going to solder on this side 3 cables. Before I solder on, I am going to just pop a small amount of solder on each of the legs. And you notice that I'm being very quick with the iron because what I don't want to do is dump a load of heat into the IC. I'm just holding these pieces of wire on top of the pin that it's being soldered to, just heating it up enough so it grabs it. Again, being very quick with the iron. The other thing that will happen with this stuff is the sleeving on here will fail. then we find ourselves with a little chip like this. And I'm going to give my soldering a little tug just to make sure that they're not come off. A lot of the videos you will see on YouTube advocate applying flux to stuff like this. Pretty much, I think it's an American thing as far as applying flux to everything. I think when you run off 120 volts, you need flux to make stuff work. So I'm going to heat shrink sleeve these just because it's neater than insulation tape. And I'm going to repeat. This is just some Chinese craft tool for gilding or something, according to my wife, but it works quite well for doing heat shrink. What I'm also going to do is apply that over it. But before I do that, I'm actually going to make sure that these are laid out in a manner that I know what's going on. Because what I don't want to do is find myself in a situation where I can't wire the chip up because I don't know what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the heat shrink sleeving over the chip like that. I'm going to wire this side in, then I'm going to move the heat shrink sleeving over. I'm going to wire this side in, and then once I've confirmed it works, we'll shrink that over there and that'll sit inside the PlayStation nice and tidy. I've got a PS1 here. This is what we're working with. I've took the screws out the bottom. There were 6 screws, one under there and one under there that you have to remove. This had some other stickers on it. I think it's been to one of the shops in the UK, a pawnbroker. So that lifts off. We've got 2 connectors to deal with. This one here, I'm going to make sure we grab all of the wires evenly and just gently pull. With this, get the white tab. You might need to just move that there, white tab, and just gently work it out. Set the laser to one side. We're going to lift off the metal tray, set that to one side, and then from the back we're going to lift the motherboard out and work it forward. It does seem to like to get hung up on this front corner on something. I'm not entirely sure what, but it will come out with a little bit of caressing. There we go. I always see what it's hung up on. If you look there, that's slightly lifted. It's got a tab on it, and that's getting caught in that hole there. We need to identify which motherboard is. There's 2 for this. And by the looks of it, one has the PMA like this one. We've got no tracks around here. The other one, which is this one's not, which you can see it says PM41 there, and it has tracks around it. It's not the same. So this is our diagram for this console. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to readjust the camera and get it to show a close-up. Okay, so it turns out this diagram I've got here is for an 8-wire installation. It doesn't really make that much difference because it's just another couple of wires to solder up. Now the main thing we've got to do is make sure we get the orientation of the chip correct. There's a dot here, and on this it's got a notch out. On this setup, the notch is going to go to the left, making this wire here number 1. Ultimately, I want to try and probably tuck this down maybe somewhere around here or something. So we'll leave a reasonable amount of cable on things. So we're going to start with number 1. I'm going to just sort of shorten the cable off a bit. grip it. A bit of solder, and I'm going to tin it. But before I start tinning this, I don't want to tin this over the board, because if I drop solder on the board, yeah, we don't want to go there. Now this is going to go just above capacitor 602 to here, and you know, there's a bit of fineness to these. And just sort of bend the wire down flat previously so I can hold it in place and tin it. Again, we're not trying to win any records for putting heat into the board, we just want it to grab. So here's my problems coming. I've actually lifted the capacitor off trying to solder to it, so this is something we've got to be careful with. Right, after that little mess up, I have put, well, I haven't put the resistor back in place. I've actually just linked it because I got the numbers off it and worked out it was a 22 ohm resistor. So the lightness is pretty much in the circuit. It's being used as a bridge. Who knows? I've kept it. If it doesn't work, I'll put it back in. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to just ignore it. We're going to continue with number 3 and number 4. They're going to go on the CD driving chip. Well, I think is a CD driving chip. I think that's probably memory. I don't know. I'm not an expert with PlayStations. I'm just right. So we're going to do number 3. Number 3 is going over here somewhere. So I'm going to just cut it down, trim it, bit of solder on it. Now this one is going on the second pin along on this one here, and I think again I'm going to have to bring a magnifying glass in. Yeah, you can't really see very well in the video, can you? So I'll just take this out and I'll come back to it. Now what I'm finding, okay, there we go. Okay, that's on. What I'm finding is that when you're soldering these, you're having to keep the lead on the end of the cable very, very, very short. What I will do once I'm happy with this is I'm going to put a bit of hot melt on these, just to make sure they stay in place. I'm going to do the same here with number 4. So again, I'm going to go and I'm going to use a magnifying glass. All being well, I can show you this one being soldered. Now this is going to go to the second pin in from this end. So it's this pin here. With a small amount of solder on it. I've got the end of my wire, which I have cut off. Very, very, very small amount of tinning on it. Come on, stay down there. Just going to line it up along the side here. A small amount of heat, and there we go, that's got that. Okay, so number 5, we're going to rotate back round again. So we're going to look at number 5. Now, according to our diagram, we've got some dots here. Number 5's going to there. So again, got a strip. So, number 5. What's going on? Number 6. Looks like it's going on to the end of capacitor 71. At the end of this component here. Next wire is going on to the end of this component here. Slightly different approach to this, because what I don't want to do is heat it twice again. After lifting that last one off, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of flux on for surface mount components. Really good stuff. Don't like using flux, but what it hopefully means is I'm going to be able to come in with a single stab on here, and I'm just trying to leave me a little ball of solder on the end of here and nothing else. So let's see. Got it. It's a really quick stab with the soldering iron. We don't want the heat on it. So number 7's going up here to this point here. And the last one we'll heat shrink that in a minute. It's going to go onto the side of the power jack. As we said, I'm going to remove I think there must be a couple of different variants of this chip. Let's have some light. This is dirty. Now, I'm going to use a bit of my flux cleaner on here, purely for the cleaning aspect of it. Not particularly easy. There we go. not a particularly easy joint to make. Took a bit of heat, that did. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this back together and we'll try it with an original CD and then a copy. There we go. Copy. Wonderful. We're just going to do a reassembly on this, and as I said, we put this over the chip, which has got heat shrink on both sides. I'm just going to shrink that around it. Much better than any insulation tape. Now I am going to put this over here to the right. The reason being is when you look at this, it's got an area around here that's lower and an area that's higher. Now I did initially think about putting hot melt on a couple of the connections, but I think it's going to seat in place quite well and stay put, so I'm not going to mess. We'll see. See there, with it on top of the IC, it's pushing it up. There's not a lot of room in this console, to be fair. Let's try just there. There we go, that's better, that's gone back into place. Put this back in. Plug the laser in, plug the motor drive in, make sure these pins are lined up, fit the top, and grab the screws out of the pot I put them in. And that's pretty much job done. I know there's lots of other tutorials on this on YouTube, but there we go, sorted.